This is a Carlitos Way podcast, talking about this, that, and the other, and everything in between, and something more.
Episode number 4 of the Carlitos Way podcast is here. What's going on? My name is Carlos Mendez, and you may know me on Instagram as Carlitos Way, Graham with a W. You may also know me via Facebook.com/DJROCKTONIK. You may also have stumbled upon this podcast purely by accident, regardless of how you found us. Thank you so much for streaming episode number 4. We won't be a bore. Sorry. But we're going to do our best to keep you in the know of everything that we have going on and also entertain, because that is what we do. Okay. Let me let you know how you can find us. Even though you already found us, I'd still love to let you know of all the platforms that we are on. We are on Apple Podcasts, search Carlitos Way Graham. However, we are working on some issues with Apple. It has come to my attention by listener John Genza that there may be some issues, so we're working on that. But we are supposed to be on Apple Podcast. Keep listening for Carlitos, or actually keep searching for Carlitos Way Podcast on there, and let us know if you find us, okay? Also, we are on Stitcher. We are on Spotify. We are on Google devices through Google Podcasts. So all you have to do is tell your Google Home to stream Carlitos Way Podcast, and you should be able to stream us. Or just search for us directly via the Google Podcast application or on your desktop. Also, you can find us on iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. All you got to do is search Carlitos Way Podcast, and you'll be able to find us on there, okay? And also remember that we are on YouTube. Just search Carlitos Way Podcast. You'll be able to find all of our episodes on there as well. And you can also go to carlosmendezyoutube.com, and you'll be able to find our episodes there as well. And you can always hit us up and let us know your feedback via our social media, which we will be giving you throughout the podcast. We already gave it to you one time. I don't want to do an overkill here. But there's another way that you can reach out to us. Just give us a call, 312-487-1195. 312-487-1195. You can call that number and leave a voice message and let us know what you think. If you want to give us an opinion about a specific topic that we're talking about, or if you want to just give some feedback about the show, let us know via that number, 312-487-1195. In addition to that, you can also shoot us a text message on that same phone number. Again, it's 312-487-1195. Again, this is episode 4, dropping on November 16th, Saturday, November 16th, 2019. We are recording a couple of days before that, so we can do post-production and so forth. So just FYI, we always like to get the info on there to give context to the things that we are talking about, okay? And as we came in today to the studio here in the Midwest, it is very cold. It was 23 degrees on my way into the studio today. It is awful here in the Midwest. I am seeing some of my friends down in Texas. Even in Austin, there's snow and it's cold. It's cold everywhere except in Florida and California, I think. Everywhere else is just cold. Here in Chicago, we got really bad snow even about 10 days ago, and then we got even worse snow to start the week. It's just not looking good over here. This is always, again, why I'm always whining that I want to live on the West Coast and why I love the West Coast so much. So shout out to all my West Coast peeps. Chicago Bears are playing there on, when is it? On Sunday, even though y'all know I'm a Raider fan first and foremost. But I always show love to the Bears. They're playing on Sunday at the LA Rams. What I'm a fan of, though, is the temperature at game time. It's supposed to be like 80 degrees at game time. My stepkid's going over there on Sunday. I'm like, you want to adopt me? You want to take me over there with you? Yeah, they're going to the Coliseum on Sunday. So good for him. And also good for you, because today is an episode that I have really been looking forward to since we first started this project. Today, we're doing being a DJ, the ups and downs and unbelievable stories. And we have a special guest that's going to be joining us briefly. But, you know, for me, there's always been kind of a stigma with DJing that it's always 100% fun and party, y puro party, pura fiesta. And it can be fantastic. Pero como cualquier otra cosa, like any other thing, it is a job. It is a gig. Like musicians, we take what we do seriously. And I'll tell you, I started doing this when I was very young. I don't want to give the whole story away because I'm going to get repetitive, because this is what we're going to be jumping in with our guests. But it's something to me that is very dear to me, because I have put a lot of hours and a lot of work into my craft. And it is something that has also put food on the table for myself and my family during difficult times. I remember in 2011, I lost my job. I was laid off, and I DJ'd my rear end off to put food on the table, to pay my mortgage and so forth. And even other times when I've been kind of between jobs because I work in media, which is very unstable at times, the DJing thing has always been there for me. So I've always taken that very seriously, and I've always been very protective of the industry or our little business that we have, so to speak, because of that. Because I feel that no matter what, no matter how much the struggle is and how much pain sometimes DJing can bring, and by pain, I mean the physical pain of setting up speakers and lugging them upstairs in elevators, to meeting with clients that can be really, really nice to you and that can also be really, really not nice to you. It can be super great and it can be super awful. But it's an industry and a business that has always been there for me till this day, that allows me to make a respectful living and has also provided for me and my family in times where we have been under less than stellar circumstances. So that's why I have so much respect for the industry and why I'm very protective of it. And if you've been following me on social media, you know who my guest is. If you're from the Chicagoland area and you're Latino, you probably know who this guy is. If you're from somewhere else, well, this guy, think of a very popular DJ in your city who's been, around at different venues and has done everything from regular nightclubs and bars to, being on stages to being on the radio, because that's what this guy is about. Okay, so you ready? Here we go.
His name is Jesse Becerra. In Chicago, he's known as Jesse el Grandote, which would be translated as Jesse the Big One. I want to welcome him. He has a really long history here in Chicago as a DJ at various venues, not just at venues, but also, at various radio stations. So let's go ahead and give him a Carlitos Way welcome. Jesse el Grandote, welcome to the Carlitos Way podcast, man.
So what's up, Carlitos? How are you, man? Great to hear from you. And I'm actually excited to hear from you and to be on the show. So thank you for the invite.
Well, thanks so much for being here. It was an honor and a privilege to be having you here on Carlitos Way podcast. So let's just jump right into it, man. So talk to me a little bit and let's share stories. Tell me about how you originally, going way, way, way back, not that way back. He's not that old. He's in his 30s. Hey, that's young.
The white hair kind of takes it away, but yeah, I'm 37, so I started back in 1996, and I started a little before that, but I could say that I was actually on the ones and twos, as early as 1996. But I just started. One of my friends was his brother was a DJ, and he was always practicing in the garage, and instead of playing tag and softball on the street or playing with my friends, I kind of veered away into the garage, and then I saw him doing his thing, and I'm like, hey man, this is pretty cool. I've always had that little music notch into me. I just never knew what I wanted to do, what I wanted to pursue. I dived a little in playing in bands and playing the drums, playing guitar and stuff like that. But I never pursued it as much as I pursued DJing. And it veered off after that. It took off, and a lot of people are like, let's start with the daytimes. Hey, I want to do a daytime. And man, it could go crazy with that, with the stories. Mm-hmm. But, fast forward to, when I was in high school, I was dabbing a little into back in the day, which was WCYC. And I was part of the transition where it was at 90.5. They transitioned into WRTE. Mm. And, I was part of, guest mix shows with a lot of DJs back in the day, back in the, mid to late 90s. And then fast forwarding to that, after high school, actually, you were one of the main people who you could say nowadays you were the plug for me to get into Univision.
Yeah.
And that's where I pursued my career for the next 14, 15 years.
And the thing is, so those stations that you're mentioning here in Chicago, those are like like they were community-based radio stations that would really have a lot of open doors to, people literally like off the street who had an interest in broadcasting. Unfortunately, those kind of outlets really don't exist in the Chicagoland area anymore. But It was a great time, in the 90s and in the 2000s when those kind of stations were around, because it opened a lot of doors to a lot of local DJs here in Chicago. Like for me, for instance, when I started getting into DJing, before I even touched any kind of turntable, any kind of deck or whatever, I used to, listen to a lot of, B96.3, here in Chicago, which would be the equivalent if you're in Chicago or like in New York of like, I'm trying to think of the station, like a mega kind of station, but those heritage kind of dance radio stations. I know in Los Angeles, for instance, it's K-Day, and they used to play a lot of freestyle and stuff back in the day. And now it's all old school hip hop. But, here in Chicago, B96 was that station for that kind of stuff back in the day, like 92, 93. There was very, very known DJs that are still known till this day. Your Julian Jumpin' Perez and your Tim Spin and Shomer. And if you don't know these guys, I Google them and it'll give you some context. If you're, out there kind of wondering who these individuals are, you're not from the Chicagoland area. But listening to a lot of that stuff is what kind of, really influenced me and got me really into, music, kind of the early 90s. Later, kind of like 97, 98, 99, I started getting really into a lot of Spanish music. Like there was a lot of a movement of like Spanish rock or rock en español and Spanish pop. Right. Yeah. And actually of all people, and I'm hoping he hears this, of all people, one of my influences, and I tell him this sometimes, I don't think he necessarily believes me, but Marshall Johns, who used to be known as DJ Sombra, because I used to hear his mixes on, 105.1 in Chicago, which is now a regional Mexican station. But back then it was a different company and it had kind of a more open format. And on, Fridays and Saturdays, they used to have these mixes that it would have a little bit of like Spanish music, but it would kind of have a hook of like house music sometimes. And it was weird because it was this station that like my dad would listen to. But then on Saturday nights and Friday nights, it was like kind of cool. Like when we would be coming back, like when he had me at like Home Depot all day, like looking for like partes para ir a arreglar el cine y a la jodida and all that stuff. But then it was like 8:00 and you would hear the mixes and you would hear this kind of music that was a little bit different than what they would play all day. So that's what got me into it.
Back in the day, there was no Home Depot, bro. Stop.
Well, actually, back then, no. Handy. ¿Sabes dónde me llevaba? My dad used to take me to this place called Courtesy Home Center. It was here in Chicago on 51st and Pulaski. And if you're from Chicago, it is now the Supermall on Pulaski.
The Supermall. Now that was wasn't that the Ventures before?
No.
Wasn't that a Venture?
No, the Venture was what's now a Target on like 44th and Pulaski. Yeah. So it used to be a Courtesy Home Center.
That was outside my boundaries, bro, because I grew up in a little village. I grew up on 26th Street. So when you would go to like 47th and Pulaski or anywhere like the Southwest side, that was a treat for us back in the day. At least for me, going outside of out of the neighborhood, you would be like, wow, what is this?
Yeah, I remember
I used to always call the like Midway area.
Yeah,
I used to always call it the suburbs of the ghetto.
Yeah, that used to be. I'm not dissing that area, but that was a really nice area back in the day. I'm not dissing it now. I really don't pass by there that much no more. I usually go around it on Harlem for no specific reason. No, I'm saying for no specific reason because I don't live near there. I live further out. So I'm not dissing the area. I'm sure it's great. The people there are great. But what I'm saying is that back in the day, it was a lot different. I remember back in the day, it was a lot different. But I remember, back in the day going out into those boundaries. So when we would be leaving like the hardware store, like on a Saturday after being out all day and it was 8:00, then you would have 105.1 and you would hear like DJ Sombra and like DJ Dinamico and all these other cats some of them are still DJing till this day. And, all of a sudden that became cool to me. So to me, I didn't even get into the whole thing of doing a kind of radio and the doors opening for me until I was in school when I was at Columbia College. And, that station, they had a station, which they still have, called WCRX. And then that station, I used to actually listen to it, in my bedroom when I was a kid or a teenager también, in addition to the B96. And I didn't even know it was part of Columbia College. So I remember when I went to Columbia College And I saw WCRX, and it's like, is that the same one? Like, I'm like, oh my God, it was here all along. And then I walked in there, and then you start mixing, and you have your radio show because it was part of the requirement, for the major I had when I was a student there. So that was kind of my route, with DJing as we got, as I started getting more into it, late 99. Early 2000s. What are some of your early experiences as far as like being out in public and once you started DJing, and even some of the early equipment that you had that you were DJing on? Was it vinyl?
Oh,
Did you learn on vinyl? Did you learn on CDs?
So I did learn on the Technic 1200s. I did have a pair, and I remember starting off with a kicker box, something that you would put in a car. And those were my speakers. And little by little, I just kept saving up. And, I had a lot of support from my parents. They're like, hey, if you're going to do this, you got to do this 100%. So some of my early stuff was, I remember it was a Rachmaninoff Denon CD player. And that was like the thing. They're like, man, CDs are going to take over. You're going to be able to DJ on CDs. And most of the years of me DJing in the public spot, like going out to different various clubs of the the Chicagoland area, it was CDs, and you would carry your two, what was it, like 200, 300 CD cases, and you used to always carry it. And back in the day, when you would go to a club, you were still able to smoke inside a club. Here in Chicago, they passed an ordinance a couple of years ago that you can't smoke inside entertainment establishments. So, but back in the day, early 2000s, they were still smoking, and I would come home, my CD cases, everything on my equipment would smell like smoke.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
Yeah, I remember that, man. I remember those days. I still have some of those binders, and I swear they still smell like smoke till this day.
Smoke, that stale tobacco smell. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No, I find some here and there, but yeah, some of the old cases that I've had along, most of that music I had saved in an MP3 format. So it was easy for me to later on in my career just to transition a little bit more to digital when, the laptop started coming in, and Serato, and one of the first DJ programs. I think you still use that to this day. It's
Torque.
What is it, Torque?
I still have it. Yeah. That's my backup. I have some stories about that in a bit. I actually use a controller now. But my backup is Torque. I do use a controller, and I use Serato, but Torque, I still carry it till this day. When I have a DJ gig, I put it in the bag. It's rescued me. It rescued me at least once. So you and I met, I think it was like 0203. We met through a mutual friend at the time, and we met at what used to be Studio 63. Studio 63, by the way, still exists. It's in a different place now, smaller venue. But back then, it was on 63rd in Harlem, in a building that's no longer there. That used to be at one point the Prime and Tender and Kicker's Corral and the whole nine. And that's where you and I met.
Yeah, I saw they tore it down. They tore down a lot of memories out of that place, Only if the walls could talk. But yeah, they tore that place down and turned it into a big parking lot.
Yeah. So that's where you and I met, like in 0203. And I remember you were mixing there. I don't remember if it was Thursdays, because I remember Thursday was kind of an open DJ night. And I remember at the time, the mutual friend we had, we were just kind of hang out there. And I know, like a lot of DJs at the time, because there was less DJs. So like today, there's like a zillion DJs, but back then there was less DJs, even though it was still very, very competitive. But the goal was to try to find, kind of a spot where you can go to. And I remember we went there once on a Thursday. And I remember we got, when we first originally went there, I went there, because this mutual friend took us there because there was another person that wanted to hook him up with the owner or the person who was running the place about possibly taking over Thursdays. And I remember I got there and I saw you and I saw another DJ by the name of Frausto, and we were there. And man, I swear, I got there and it was empty. There was like 3 people there and it was Thursday. And it's like, oh my God. And again, this is after I kind of was like, I had been DJing for about 4 or 5 years, But you don't do it every day, like out in public. So you do it like mostly at your house or in your bedroom. And back then, what I would do is I would go to Walgreens and I would buy the high quality cassettes and record my sets. Yeah, because and that was like big time because those cassettes were not cheap. You used to buy a bag of like 3 and they were almost like $10.
Yes.
And if it was a good week, it was like, all right, I'm going to spring for these cassettes because it was like the 3, or sometimes you were lucky and they had the single. The single was like $4. Mm-hmm. And then I would just keep reusing it. And, I would record my sets on there. So then I remember we met at Studio 63 and that was again through a couple of mutual people. I remember going there and it was empty. How did you originally go there? Was it through Frausto when you were into Studio 63?
Yeah, actually, I ended up going to that place. One of my cousins used to love going there, and he's like, "Man, you got to come to the spot. You'd be good at this place." Mm-hmm. So sure enough, like, I wasn't really, I wasn't the type of guy that would show up to places. A lot of people would call me, book me. They've heard me somewhere, like on a referral basis. Mm. But this one particular time, I went up. And we were at the bar, and I met Frausto, and my cousin's like, he's a DJ, right?
Yeah.
And we started talking, and he's like, hey, why don't you come on by? And he's like, let me see what you got, and I'll give you a guest spot. And I'm like, all right, cool. Mm-hmm. So after that guest spot, we would do Wednesday nights, which is Noches Latinas, mm-hmm. which we would, and at that time I was dabbing a little bit more into the Latin side of things of music because the English side, for DJs, it was very competitive. You had your big time shots of those radio stations, but at that time there wasn't really a lot of Latin DJs back in the day. Mm-hmm. So, and this is when I remember the reggaeton movement was just starting. The Gasolina that was just coming out. That was like one of the hottest tracks back then. So, everything, there wasn't a lot of Latin DJs. So he liked my style. He's like, man, I want you to be the resident DJ. And sure enough, because of that, a lot of doors opened. A lot of doors opened for me as far as a lot of other clubs, a lot of places. And then I was just diving myself a little bit more into the regional Mexican. And then right then and there, that's when I started with Univision. Mm-hmm. I just kept expanding my portfolio because other than the DJ, I was, I had become, a voiceover personality and, on-air personality and stuff like that. So we were on the air, we were talking, I was doing, spots, liners, anybody in the production world, I was just considered an official voice for a radio station. And all of that was just going on. So it was a lot to chew.
Yeah,
it was a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah,
because you would come in, it was a club that would close at 4 a.m. mm-hmm. for the public. But you always afterwards, you're always lingering around. You always drink till 5. I remember one time we left there about 7 a.m. just because we just kept drinking and just chilling with just a handful of people. And I'm just like, my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. So other than that, that's how that music scene started, and it kind of went in hand with, the radio side when I started doing mixes for a radio station. Back then, it was called La Calle, so it was the first reggaeton station in Chicago. Mm-hmm. So they opened that format, and it was just something that was really, really big, and I was just grateful to be part of that.
What would you say, like, originally for you that really got you into, like, DJing? Because, I think back then, late 90s, early 2000s, there's this whole thing of, like, DJs wanting to DJ, let's be honest, for the lifestyle, getting paid getting paid to party and meet people, meet women, whatever.
Right.
And I'm being honest, for me, I mean, I think that for me, believe it or not, I think that as a 20-something-year-old male, yeah, there's a part of it that is alluring to you, like it lures you in a little bit. But to me, I always legitimately wanted to like experiment with music. I always legitimately wanted to be in a situation where I could play around with music simultaneously while people had a good time. It was never necessarily about like meeting, women or whatever. I am going to be honest. There was a time where it was not necessarily about meeting women, but just the ego side of me, where it's like, the ego, where that's not necessarily meeting women. It's just like, look, look, I'm on this pedestal and I'm DJing.
It's a 360 perspective of an ego. It's a 360 perspective. For me, it was mostly one of the things that would get me going, and I think you and I could talk for it, is when you move a crowd, when you have a dance floor that's really packed, and they just dance, and whatever you're giving them, they're dancing. I think that was something as a huge pleasure for me. Mm-hmm. A huge pleasure for me to be giving that experience to somebody that, man, the music's good. There's a good ambiance. There's been countless of places where they're throwing garbage music, and it's like, are you serious? The dance floor is not even packed, and people kind of get rubbed the wrong way when all those things don't click.
Right.
So for me, the biggest pleasure was to have a place. Let's say that place had a 800 people capacity, and let's say maybe 600-700 people on the dance floor at one time it's very fulfilling to an ego.
Right.
And for me as a because back then I was considered a club DJ. So as a club DJ, I was able to experiment. I was able to break through. Hey, this is the first song that's coming out. I just got this song, and we're gonna play it just for you guys. Tell me what you think. And for people to, I would get a lot of compliments where like, man, I heard this song while you were playing it. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, now fast forward to 2019, I don't think you have to have the right people or like the lovers of music under one roof in order to get that same thing, because now everybody's attention span is either, if I don't like that song in the first 30 seconds, I'm going to sit down.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. And yeah, definitely, like, it's really changed. There's a lot of fond memories I have of the mid 2000s as opposed to now. It's funny because now my perspective on just DJing has changed. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But I did want to ask you, because we're kind of on the topic right now of the mid 2000s, how often, and just be as real as possible with me, how often did you DJ for free in the mid 2000s?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I want to say 40% of the time.
Yeah.
40% of the time.
And
yeah.
I compare it a lot. I compare it a lot to being, because I see, what I compare like being a DJ to, especially in the 2000s, kind of people who are trying to break into comedy. When I see a lot of like comedians, and I know, and I won't name the person, but I know like somebody who a couple years ago, I used to work with them, left Chicago, moved to Los Angeles, is working over there now. I don't know if a lot of his gigs right now are paid. I know he has a day job. But I know that, you have to go out there, you're in Los Angeles, so you move out there because that's the spot to get noticed when you're doing that kind of stuff. Right, Chicago's cool, but it's not going to be as quick as Los Angeles. So he lives over there now, but I would assume, and I am assuming, that he probably doesn't get paid a lot. I notice he does a lot of like Monday spots and Tuesday spots and things like that.
Okay.
So, you kind of put two and two together, and it reminds me a lot, at least of like when I was trying to break into DJing in the 2000s, early 2000s, because I always found myself doing stuff on Thursdays, and I would either do it for very little money or I would do it for no money. Like I remember spinning at like Teeny Martini for like $50. And I remember, DJing at this place called Spot 6 on, up in Wrigleyville, also for like $50. I remember sometimes going somewhere and it being so dead because it was Wednesday or Thursday that, I would get the sob story from the promoter about not being able to pay me. But how can I argue with them when nobody's there?
Right.
No,
it's countless times where the sob story was most of the time where like I would have probably a packed place and they'll be like, oh, sorry, we didn't make any money, or let me get at you later. then they would have got MIA. At least for gas, they'll be like, and most of the gigs that I used to get back in that time era would be like, hey, bro, can you DJ for me? And, you got free drinks all night. So at that time, it was a little enticing because first, I had no responsibilities. Secondly, I lived with mommy and daddy. All I had to worry at that time was about cell phones, and at that time, we had anytime minutes. So it was like, I remember back in the day, I thought I was all big and bad because I would pay $100 for my cell phone because I would have unlimited text and unlimited minutes. And so it'd be like, yeah, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I got it, so that's why, like, somebody comes at me and says, hey, I got free drinks the whole night. All right, well, I'm bringing in about 10 people.
Right.
And we're going to party.
Right.
So it was enticing. As you grow older, as I started a family, I got real bills, moved out of the house, and now I have my own place. I have my own house. It's like, those drinks aren't going to make it work.
No, I couldn't tell you how many times I DJ'd for free in the mid-2000s. Now, the thing with me is I always went into something expecting or not expecting to get paid. I want to say probably 95% of the time, if, going into something, I already knew if I was or if I wasn't going to get paid. And I would always just kind of have a feeling. And my feeling was always like, if we didn't talk about any kind of money or anything, then I pretty much wasn't expecting to get paid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I wouldn't just bring it up because to me, I would get, and I understood where I was at kind of in the totem pole when it came to DJing and my experience, my popularity, whatever. And, it wasn't probably until I had been doing it for like a good while that then I started seeing some money trickle in. At a time when I really needed it. I remember, it was around 08, 09 that I started seeing some money coming in. And then as that kind of, took place, and I actually started getting a lot of like private gigs. And as I started getting more private gigs, I had a lot of private gigs, which the most private gigs I ever had was probably between like 08 and like 2012. And as that happened, I really kind of transitioned into not doing like the club stuff a lot. And I actually started putting more value on my time. So I always would, start to come up with the rule, like, if I wasn't going to see any money, I wasn't going to leave the house, because in my point of view, by the time we're getting to like 08, 09, 2010, it's like, you know what? I've kind of been doing this a while. I've been through situations where I know how to handle any kind of emergency. I'm super prepared. I can DJ and be an MC at the same time. I still do that till this day. So to me, it was always like, you know what? No. And I started saying no to more and more people. At what point did you start, putting a value on yourself where you kind of stopped taking these gigs, doing stuff for free regularly? I'm sure you and I still probably do a gig here for like some sort of charity event, for no money. But I'm talking about, yeah. And I'm talking about like more in general where it's like, no, now, I need to get compensated.
You know what? Like, I just finished doing a couple fundraisers and some charity events. And don't get me wrong, we have a lot of close friends in our circle where we'll probably do it, for free. Or, the good thing about it is like when you do those things, they do offer something afterwards. Like, hey, here's like $100 or something like that. And that's good, all good, because they're taking care of at least your gas. But I believe at that point where I started valuing myself was probably in 2007, between 2007 and 2010. That's where I was like, all right, this has to stop.
Right.
This has to stop because it's like I'm cool about partying and having a good time. So, sometimes a lot of DJs or like myself, they'll be like, well, I'm kind of doing both at the same time. I'm DJing and I'm having a good time. I'm going out and, we go out to do some things. Right. But after, and I want to say 2007, because that's when my wife got pregnant with my son. And he was just like, all right, you know what? Diapers ain't cheap.
Right.
We just got to keep on, formula ain't cheap.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't just be out of the house. And at that time, it was more like I would get home at 2, 3 in the morning, and my son would be waking up at 5, 6, 7 in the morning. And you're like, oh, this has to stop. So you look at things of life changing things. Yeah, it was about that time where I just started saying, you know what, I can't be doing this anymore, and I just gotta stick to my brand, basically, because that's what it was. I was working my way to building a brand where they could say, hey, you know what, Jesse Grandote is a household name, and we're gonna, we know that's gonna equal to quality and have a good time.
Right.
So after that, but then at that same time, that's when the recession hit, and a lot of stuff kept going downhill. Like back in that time era, I had a lot of corporate companies coming to me for private events, so that was keeping me afloat, because that was, every type of gig was several $1,000s. So you're like, cool, I could do this corporate stuff. But then the recession hits, and you're like, whoa, what happened to these people?
Right. Yeah. And I, like with me, I really didn't feel the pinch of the recession. I didn't do a lot of corporate events. I would do a lot of referrals for like quinceañeras and birthday parties. So, and my clientele, to be honest, has always been different. And I think I've even mentioned this in some of my of the forums that we're both a part of. Is that I really don't partake too much in the big events with like the monograms on the walls and the trusses and the multiple TV screens and things like that, because my whole thing is like I'm still I'm a DJ, not like an event producer. I understand now being a DJ now is more of an event producer, but to me there's two things. I have a really small house, so I don't have the space to keep all that stuff. Number one. Number two, I don't want to DJ every weekend at this point in my life, So it's like, if I'm going to go in, and I've done the math, so if I'm going to go, I'm going to invest $3,000 or $4,000 in gear, I need to take this many, bookings per year.
Per year.
Exactly.
Right.
But I don't want to do that. So, at this point in my life, what I do is like, I kind of take, like, I can count how many like gigs I do, mobile ones on one hand per year. And then on top of that, I throw, whatever I do at there's this place in River North that I'm sure if you follow me on Instagram, where it's at, that I kind of pick and choose there when I want to go in, as well, and in there, what I like is that I'm literally in a room and I already know the format that they want me to play, and they trust me because they don't really, they already know who to trust. So I'm within the inner circle, so to speak.
Right,
and I'm behind a closed door, because I'll tell you, at this point in my life too, I'm not a huge fan of people coming up to me requesting me, songs that don't go with the format, especially when, they have the andan bien borrachos. I know, which totally goes against DJing, man, because it's like, I get it. It's a party atmosphere, but man, I get so like, here's the thing, man. And let's jump into stories.
I can tell you countless stories about requests, because it goes into a fine line. Like, that's fine. I kind of get the request situation from somebody that wants to hear that song. That's fine and dandy with me, though. But when it comes down to a promoter or a club owner coming to you and say, "Hey, I want you to play this like right off the bat," like, take the shit off.
Right.
Excuse my language. Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's a podcast. I mean, we try to keep it clean, but it's fine. You're not going on some sort of massive cursing rant. It's fine.
No. It just most of the time where like I would get countless stories where you have a dance floor packed, and I remember one time somebody was like, "You know what? You need to change this right away." And I remember telling the guy, I'm like, why? Why do you want me to change this? Like, this is my job. And I'm helping you out, because you know why? It's a trickle-down effect. They're dancing. They're tired. They're thirsty. They're going to want to go drink at your bar. Whatever they want to drink, that's going to be, that's the whole purpose of a DJ. And, to get them tired, to get them thirsty so they could drink, and have a good time.
Right.
It's plain and simple. But, he didn't understand that. And I remember it was just like, take this off now.
Yeah.
Take this off now or you're fired.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, hold up. And at that time, I was like, all right, I'll change it. I changed it to whatever genre he wanted to. And, of course, the dance floor just emptied up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's
was
no
this a
point
promoter?
into
Or
this.
was this a promoter?
This was a club owner.
Okay.
This was a club owner. So what ended up happening one time, he just constantly, every time I kept going back to that venue, it was just constant. Like, hey, you know what? Until I kind of got the courage to tell him, you know what? Keep your money and get yourself a jukebox.
Right.
After he paid me one night, I told him, keep your money, save it towards the jukebox, because honestly, you don't need a DJ here. If you're gonna keep on bothering bothering a person, you obviously know what kind of music you want. I'm not that guy. I'm not that DJ that's gonna be your puppet, because you hire me to bring in people because of my personality, because of how I know how to move a crowd, and obviously you're making money because there's a lot of people.
What was the reaction?
He was shocked. He was shocked, but at that time he was more of he was confident enough. He was confident enough because what ended up happening was he was he's like, well, I see the DJ perspective as a revolving door.
Mm-hmm.
So he thought that I could easily get replaced, which, that's fine. There's a lot, like you say nowadays, there's a lot of DJs in the DJ world, but there's very select few that know how to read a crowd. And a lot of people get it into the wrong reasons. So his attendance spiked because there was really that music selection that everybody looked for, and having a place to party till 4 or 5 in the morning, it had all gone downhill because it's meaningless if you don't have the right talent.
Right. See, and the thing is, some people don't understand. Like, people sometimes think that a DJ is a DJ. I always remember a Christmas party for a place I used to work for, and it was a place that also had students.
Right.
And I remember I had a DJ to the Christmas party in the past for that place. And I had my binder. Again, this is the mid-2000s. I had my binder with CDs in there. But they had the student DJing.
Wow.
They had the student DJing, and the student was playing like really underground hip-hop. But this was like the demographics were like Hispanic 28 to like... like 55, and they wanted it was their Christmas party, and they wanted to hear like, Spanish, like norteñas, and, a little bit of rock en español, and they wanted to hear, a little bit of salsa and whatever. And, he was playing like, I don't even know what he was playing, because it was really deep underground hip hop for like the year 2006, 2007. And I felt so bad because they kept nudging me, hey, man, you need to jump on. This party is going to the crapper. And, I really didn't want to. I was put in a very tough position. And I'm going to be honest, I did it. And we salvaged like 1 hour of that Christmas party. But I felt really lousy afterward. I know this person didn't like me afterward. But, until this day, I'm like, should I have done that? Should I not have done that? But what was I supposed to do? I did it, but I felt really bad. But then it goes back to what I just said. People sometimes feel that a DJ is just a DJ, and it's not like that at all.
No. I've had a client, speaking of Christmas parties and all along the line. I had a guy who would hire me. He has actually a business, a very big business, where he would get a couple of his stores, and he would throw a big Christmas party for his employees. So it was year after year, and I built a relationship with him. And one time I told him, like, hey man, you haven't booked me. I bumped into him, and I'm like, you haven't booked me to your Christmas parties. What happened? He's like, honestly, bro, you push buttons. You push buttons for music, and I got a guy who charges me $50. So why would I invest in whatever you do? Why would I get you if this guy's charging me $50?
Yeah.
I'm like, an hour or the whole night? He's like, yeah. He's just charging me $50 the whole night. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. You could keep that guy. I'm like, if you're content with them, then obviously you don't know the value of music or the value of your party.
Right,
You know?
right. And I'm sure, you know, somewhere on this earth there's somebody who charges $50 who's probably decent at their job. I don't know if it's in the United States. You know, the currency is different in other parts of the world. So I don't know. But
you know what? It's funny because the guy, I was actually out in Manzanillo in Mexico, and I got contracted for a wedding out there. And as I'm going over there, the guy's like, your controller's bad. I remember taking my own controller because every time I travel, I don't trust everybody's other people's equipment. It's like underwear. You know, you got to always have your own.
yeah.
So I took my own control. I took my own controller, and the guy's like, your controller's bad. I'm like, oh, it is. And I'm like, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, get on the phone because I know there's a lot of other DJs here. I need something to rent right away. If it's my controller, how much is he going to charge me?
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, he made some phone calls and he's like, I got a Pioneer controller that he could sell, he could bring it to you. And then he's like, but he's going to charge you. So I'm ready to drop at least $200-$300, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, man, how much is it going to be? He told me the price and it was equivalent to $40.
Really?
It was equivalent to $40.
Wow.
And then I found out that it wasn't my controller. It was actually one of the guy's wires, the sound guy that put everything.
So they gypped you out of $40.
No, I didn't get it. I didn't agree on it yet. So I found out because I'm like, let me backtrack. Let me just double check that it's my equipment and not his. Sure enough, I found out it was his wire. I'm like, bro, it's your wire. It's not my stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, but then I was like, man, I could just, get the controller for $40 and I'll still be comfortable.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
But it's like, you're absolutely right. And there's always, in this business, there's always going to be somebody that's going to want to undercut our worth just so they could get the gig, just so they could get that exposure.
Right.
And sometimes it's at this point in my day and age, at this point in life, that's fine. If you're going to undercut me, then that's fine. Because that makes me feel that I'm not valued by that specific person.
Now to give a little bit of context real quick to what you said, like, because a lot of people, they might not know what a controller is. So the way it works in the DJ world now, in the old days, now if you want to go really old school, you used to have the two turntables with the vinyl, and then you had the mixer.
A mixer,
yeah,
right.
Mid 2000s, you had the two CD turntables where you would literally have CDs that you would put in, and then mix them the way you would the vinyl and the mixer, and that's how you would do it.
Yes.
And then there was a time, maybe like 06, 07, where it was still the same element that I just mentioned with the CDs, but then you started integrating a laptop into the whole aspect, and then the CDs were encoded, so that would actually read the files off of your laptop, so you didn't actually have to carry nothing more than two CDs, which were the encoded ones that would be able to queue up songs from your laptop. Now, after about 2010, 2011, 2012, you have the full-blown controller, which is basically think of it as like a rectangle. It's a rectangle, and in that rectangle you have the two aspects, which would usually, they look almost like CD players, and then in the middle you have the mixer, but it's all one whole piece, and that's what's called a controller. You literally just plug it into your laptop with a USB. A lot of people, it's made things easy for a lot of people. I use one. I'm not gonna lie, when I still do a wedding or something, I still use my CDJs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still use my CDJs because it's just what I'm used to, and like to me, it's like, okay, it's a big event, so I feel like things queue up easier to this day on the CDJs. When I queue something up on a controller, I sometimes don't feel as comfortable. I feel like the the jog pitch is not the same. I need like a really wide jog pitch, and I like to feel that feel. So like, for instance, when I DJ though, like at in the River North area, because it's so small in there, and I just take my book bag. So I'll take a really small controller, which is the more recent CDJ, or the more recent DJ Pro, or DJ to go, I should say. The DJ to go 2. So that's what I use when I DJ in the River North area. And I don't use AutoSync. AutoSync, again, for all those out there listening, AutoSync pretty much lets you beat map the songs where they transition into each other on the same beat. But if you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't know what beat to actually come in on, it defeats the purpose.
There's going to be a train wreck.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many mixes like on YouTube that I sometimes, hear that they're transitioning on the same beats per minute on the BPM, but they're like on the wrong beat. And one thing I found, and it could just be me, but I'm very anal when it comes to that stuff, because I'll listen to, even when I'm practicing with like the auto sync, I still don't feel like it comes. I feel like it's always like even 0.1% off.
Oh, wow.
and it's the worst thing, because once you sync it in, you can't play with the pitch.
Right. Definitely.
You can't play with the pitch. I mean, you can, but it's going to change the whole thing. You're still at that 0.1% off. Whereas when you come in with the song, you literally can manipulate the song and use the jog wheel or use, whatever to just sync it in, in real time. And to me, I still need to have that. And to me, that's why, even though I use a controller, I feel like I'm still, using that original DJ art, because I'm still using, that masterization, so to speak, in real time of a song to actually integrate it, into the next song. Again, the newer cats, at least from what I see, they don't do that. I'm not going to sit here and talk smack about them. It's a different time. To each their own. I used to kind of be like that. I used to be like that like 8 or 9 years ago. I'm no longer like that. At this point, it's just kind of like, you know what? You can keep the market. I kind of have what I do, and I don't want to do it full time anyway. So do your thing, I don't know how you feel about that.
I think now what it is, it's I think DJs have kind of stopped that, that chatter about, DJing is better done on 1200s, or DJing is better done on CDJs. Like you said, to each their own. I'm more about mobility.
Mm-hmm.
The mobility of having the access of plugging in and just going out. You know?
Me too.
I just it's just so easy, because you plug and play. You're still doing your skills. You're still using it, but you're using it to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I like to use a little bit more controllers. I had to, kind of transition them, because there was a time I was just using my CDJs, the Pioneer, the CD players.
Mm.
But then I just found myself that I was just doing more and more, it was more work for me.
Mm.
And if you would invest a little bit more on of accessibility, where you could just take it out and you plug in one USB, and it still gives you the whole, your whole perspective of being able to DJ and probably even do it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Why not? So
I feel the same way. I take my DJ to go when I go DJ up in River North, maybe once a month or whatever. Which, by the way, go on my Instagram. You can see I'm making a return on Friday. I think it's November 22nd. Cheap plug. But I do that up there because, again, it's so small. I like walking in there with like my book bag. There was a time, even like 5 or 6 years ago, because I've DJed there a while, I used to take a big ass Nike bag with the laptop, and I would still take CDs because I always was very anal that something was going to go wrong. So the CDs were still my backup. Now it's different, because now it's like I take my controller, I test everything out when I haven't DJed in a while. I test my controller, and it happened one time recently where I went to DJ up there, and I remember that day I went to Six Flags, and I was there all day. I left Six Flags like at 7, and then I had to go DJ in River North, and there I started at 9. It was a long day, a very long day. It was hot as hell. It was like July, and I covered and I took care of my laptop as best as I could. It was a Mac. and I made sure, where it was somewhere where I knew it wouldn't get too hot. The Mac worked great. The problem was my controller was not working. Like I couldn't get audio out of the main out. I could get it out of the headphones, but I couldn't get it out of the main out. So I had to go to plan B, and it goes back to the story you were talking about using kind of an old software, Torque. If you go and you kind of read the history of Torque, it was developed by M Audio. It originally came out, I think, in 06, 07.
Oh my God! Well, I remember when it first came out, I'm like, that's what's going to turn me into a digital world. In the digital DJ world, this is going to be it. And I'm going to be, I always thought myself, I'm going to be the star of, I'm going to be the face child of this. I'm going to be the face of Torque, and I'm going to show everybody that this is the way to do it. And then my computer started crashing. And then I started getting crashes in the middle of the club.
That's
and
the
then
worst.
I had to restart the computer.
That's the
and
worst.
You just had to fumble. And at that time, that's when you had your CDs as a backup. So yeah, you had to fumble the first CD, and boom. And to this day, that's just one of the downsides of going all digital on a controller, because a couple months ago, my computer crashed unexpectedly, and I'm like, and to me, thinking about these things is, when you invest so much money into your equipment, you're making sure, aside from it looking all nice and making sure what it works, but you want to make sure that it's gonna work for you. It's like you're paying for it to be built like a tank, and for nothing to go wrong. So that's why I'm like, all right, I'm gonna invest in this. I had invested myself in a nice laptop where, like, okay, it's this Mac, it's not gonna crash on me. For some odd reason, it did. And then I guess it went back to the previous, like, wherever it does like their autosave and stuff like that. So it took me back to the Serato program. It took me back to the previous version of where it had backed up. And I had not, I had gotten a new controller. So there was updates, and it said, if you don't update to the new software, it's not going to work on this controller. So what ended up happening was it kept crashing like every other song. At every other song.
But this was after you did the update, or you didn't do that?
Because this was before. Well, I had done the update, but remember, the computer crashed, and it kind of backtracked to the previous version.
Okay.
So what ended up happening was it took 30 minutes for me to use the Wi-Fi and download the new version.
What did you do in those 30 minutes? How did you get through that gig?
I had no backup, so there was dead music.
There was no music?
No music.
What did the client say?
The good thing about it is that the client was like, you know what, I understand. This is fine. Don't worry. Just get the music up and running. We really trust you. I know what you could do. And this was a client who had, this is actually a wedding, and they had seen me at another wedding. So they're like, we know what you could do. Just get the music up. We understand.
Wow.
Man, I was, at that moment, it was like Southwest Airlines. Want to get away? And you just see people just looking at you, and thank God the bar was open. But it was just like, please don't crash on me. After I got it up and running, I was like, please don't crash on me. Please don't crash on me.
People do not know the technical struggle. See, people, and sometimes people, like, I've had people tell me, like, and I'm just putting a round number out there. So I'm just saying, like, okay, let's just say I'm charging $900 for 4 hours or 5 hours. I'm not saying that's what I charge. I'm not saying that's what I don't charge, but I'm putting a number out there. And then I've had people tell me that are within the inner circle, and they'll be like, man, that's a lot of money. You're making like, $200 an hour. And it's like, okay, you're not understanding the kind of the, what goes into everything. Everything from, like, I have to sit here and during the week, and I have to run all these updates and make sure everything's up to, par. I have to, make sure I have all the music that they're asking for. I have to put it in a bunch of folders and organize it specifically for that event. If the event starts at 5:00, I need to, usually what I do the day before, I still, grab all my wires, put them all in a bag, because I don't just have, again, I live in a small place, so I have everything kind of in a room or in a space. So then I have to reorganize it for that specific gig, so that when I get there, I know where everything is at. I have to do all of that the day before or during the week when I have some time. That's in addition to my quote unquote day job. Then on top of that, if the event starts at 5 o'clock, I still get up, that morning and I'm still checking everything, double checking, seeing if I have, anything that I need to back up or whatever. Sometimes they'll still reach out to you, the client will that morning. Then if it's at 5 o'clock, you're leaving your house, depending on where it's at, you're leaving 2 hours before or even 3 hours before. My thing is to always be at a venue no later than 1 hour before, maybe even sooner. You set everything up. You have the music playing. I always try to have the music playing 15 minutes before I supposedly start. So if it starts at 5, I want to have it up by 4:45. You go through the event. I usually DJ and MC together. So I always do that, together. I do everything. Then when we're done, it finishes, let's say at, 11. Well, it's done at 11. It never fails que tengo la gente que me está pidiendo que me quede. Okay?
Another extra hour.
Yeah. So my whole thing is this. So first of all, I do everything by contract. And I've learned the hard way. I do everything by contract. I'll tell you why briefly. But I do everything by contract because, if you're out there, whatever you do, if you're kind of a freelance worker, it's always best to put everything in writing so that both parties know what you're expecting. So I know a lot of people now, it's a big deal now with all these makeup artists and, I do makeup or, que soy un taquero. Everybody now is like a Mexican entrepreneur, which is cool. I mean, I respect your hustle. But my whole thing is to always have everything in writing because everybody knows what to expect. Hay que haber cuentas claras. So, let's just say it finishes at 11. I always do as a courtesy 10, 15 minutes, where I play music. And I don't charge them for that. But I have in the back of my mind that that's what they're going to want because my whole thing as a DJ has always been, especially when it's a private gig, to send them home happy. So then that's done, and then everybody's drunk, and then they leave. And in the middle of everybody being drunk and, ill-mannered, then you have to break everything down by yourself, fold it all up, and then you still have to go back, load up your car. I remember a gig I did in April. I don't know if you remember April of 2019 here in Chicago. It was like 4 days to May, and it was snowing.
It was snowing, yeah.
Yeah, it was like April 27th. I did a wedding, and I remember when we signed a contract with that client, who's a great client. But I remember signing the contract with her, and it was a referral. And I remember, I looked at the day, April 27th. At the worst, it's going to be like 45, 50 degrees and cloudy. It's April. It's Chicago. And it was snowing, man. I literally had to go, I had to find a way to get everything in the car where it wouldn't get any kind of moisture around it.
Right.
And then we get to the venue, and I literally was competing for an elevator with the florist. Getting there.
God.
I was competing with the florist. So then here's the thing. I get there. I'm all set up and ready to go, right? I hadn't done my audio check yet. And the guy from the kitchen comes and tells me, you can't be here. You can't have the speaker here. I had it. It wasn't blocking the kitchen, but in his eyes, it was too close to the kitchen. So then I had to take it down, and then I had to take out a bunch of cable and throw a bunch of cable to the other side. Okay, whatever. And now it's getting close to 6 o'clock, which is when the gig starts. It's snowing outside because I still had parking was an issue, whatever. Okay, so that's that. Luego, I throw the cable, and finally I get the music going. But I'm only hearing music out of one speaker. And I'm backtracking. I could not, for the life of me, find the issue. And at that point, the mariachi has already showed up. They showed up 5 minutes early. It was 5:55. And once I heard the mariachi play music, I started freaking out. Because that means they're getting closer. Because it was supposed to be a mariachi at 6 o'clock. And then we were going to do the introductions for the wedding at 6:30.
Oh, my God.
I'm getting anxious, literally, as I'm telling you this. I'm getting anxious. And I was still in street clothes. I always show up to a gig in street clothes because, it's labor putting everything up. So I get there. I was still in street clothes. And I'm like, man, I need to, Carlos, get it together, man. Get it freaking together. You're not a rookie. So I remember what I did is there was something I forgot in the car. So I left the issue behind. I'm like, the mariachi's playing. I went to the car and I think I had to grab my dress clothes. I grabbed the dress clothes as calmly as I could. I went back upstairs, and then I I stepped away, and then I just looked at everything, and it was an XLR cable.
Oh.
It was an XLR cable. I swapped it out, and now it was working. And it's crazy how the stress sometimes gets to you, because the snow that day kind of posed some issues. Like, there was a lot of traffic for a Saturday, and I kind of miscalculated my time. So I probably got there a little later than I wanted to get, and all of this happened. Finally, we had everything going. And again, people really didn't know the drama you went through. That's what you're paying for.
Right.
All of that is what you're paying for. So nobody else has to worry about that but the DJ. And that same day, I remember through everything, there was a song that we were supposed to play. I think it was it was like the mother son dance, or like, it was one of those dances.
Yeah.
The song I had cut off after like a minute. It was like 48 seconds. No. But I caught it in time. I never actually played it. So before that, it was one of the other dances. And as that one finished, there was kind of dead air. And then what I did is I always try to have like a kind of a música de fondo, like a background song playing. So I potted that one up on the mixer, and I did go up to the bride and I said, you know what? I just noticed that the next song is cut short. If I play it, it's going to cut off in the middle of it. I go, if you give me 3 minutes, I'll be able to fix the problem. So there was a little bit of awkwardness because everybody was waiting like, okay, what's next? And then meanwhile, I had to like re-download the song, fix the issue. And in the meantime, I'm also on the mic telling everybody to go, and we still have open bar and all that stuff. You just try to smooth everything out as much as possible. But that's where you're earning your money, because the people who were supposed to dance, they didn't dance to a cut-off song. And especially in this day and age where everybody has their phones out and they're on Instagramming and they're doing stories, etc. You don't want to be that DJ that makes somebody's story because the song cut off.
Right.
And that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, I'll be damned if this is going to cut off. I'm like, I'd rather make everybody wait. They're going to wait. And I'm going to get this song, but their asses are going to wait because we're going to get the whole song and it's not going to cut off. And then later, once it was over, the bride came and she was very happy. But again, I told her, I go, sorry about earlier. I go, but I made the best decision possible given the circumstances, because I didn't want, the song to cut off. And that was one of my last gigs.
And that's one of the things, like, you got to pay for your music. You can't just download it to all these sketchy sites because you don't even know what kind of quality it is.
Well, that song they were asking for that day was a very deep song. So I had to really get creative to find that song.
No, I get it. And that's sometimes you got to be creative. But talking about like all the snow and all that stuff, and the weather, the crazy weather that we get here in Chicago,
mm-hmm.
are there some? Maybe it's a question to you. Now I feel like I'm the host.
Uh-huh.
But are there places where you will not DJ? I think at this point in my career right now, I can pick and choose, and I've turned down so many clients where I'd say, "Oh, you're having it there? Sorry, I'm not gonna go there."
I can tell you, I don't have like any specific places where I won't go. Like if there's a place that I don't know about, I'll reach out to somebody that I know, like yourself or Marshall or somebody that is kind of within the DJ circle or on a DJ forum, and ask like, "Hey, what's the experience working here?" And then that's what I go from. I remember there was a place that a mutual friend of ours hooked me up with a gig. He asked me. He couldn't do it that day. I forgot why. I did it. And it was a pizza place, and it's on the south side of Chicago, and they have like a hall.
Yes.
And I remember at one point, I think you stopped by with that individual, and I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. And don't mention the name of the place, but it's a pizza place.
I think I know what
it was in July. It was in July, and there was no air conditioning.
Yeah.
There was no air conditioning. It was July. It is one of the most miserable gigs I ever did. Thankfully, glory be to God that nothing technical went wrong, because the heat in that place was enough to make me, as miserable as possible. I can't imagine if something would have gone wrong, but it was so hot. It was easily 90 degrees in there. Like easily. It was easily 90 degrees in there. Mind you, then it's full of people. I don't know how I got through that gig. And then the manager or the owner, whatever he was, came to me at one point, and he kind of made a big deal about why I had so many things plugged in. And I'm like, because, and he's like, yeah, he's like, you're using all my electricity. I'm like, what electricity? You're not using any. You don't have a damn AC.
There's a lot of places where I refuse to go to. There's one place in particular where this venue is it has about 4 or 5 halls in one, and it's like in a strip mall. Mm-hmm. And basically, what it is, it's in the lower level of the place. So there's street level, and there's escalators to take all the guests down and up. But for any type of entertainment as such, like a DJ, you can't use the escalators to bring down your equipment. You have to use the stairs. And there are 3 separate flights of stairs that you would have to take your equipment down and up. And I remember one of the last places, one of the last times I went to that place was because somebody had told me, hey, I'm the owner. I'm going to throw my birthday party. Please, I really like you. I want you to come. I'll let you use the escalators. And I'm like, yeah, definitely. All right. If you let me use the escalators, it's doable. Mm-hmm. I remember he let me take 1 speaker down, and he said, turn off the escalators. And I said, what? He's like, no, that's it. You could only take 1 speaker. He's like, now you're going to break my escalators. And I'm like, wow.
Changing the rules in the middle of the game.
Yes. Wow. So it's just like, oh, okay. And he was swearing up and down, I'm going to give you more business if you do this party for me. He'd give me a stack of business cards. To this day, I do not have any extra business because of that. and there's several clients where they'll be like, give me your business cards. You're going to be booming after you do this one event for free for me, and it's going to happen. Just you need to give me your business cards. And it's like, no, I already know that trick.
Yeah. I think we've all been enough. Like, if you've done this enough, you know kind of who the shady people are. You also know, even if you don't know the shady people or this person, you know the phrases to look for when somebody's trying to con you, right?
Of course.
Now we're talking about stories. I'm going to tell you my all-time story. This is till this day, and I have a lot. Everything from when I saw people get maced, when family. So I'll tell you the small ones first. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I'll give you the tidbits. Amongst my stories is I was doing something once. Towards the end of the night, the family started fighting with each other, and then an overzealous security guard that was hired by that suburb started spraying them with mace in the face. And then it's like, shut it down, and they shut down the music. That was one. I remember one time when I was DJing at a restaurant that would, be kind of a club at night in Pilsen, like 27th and Oakley, that little Italy area. Okay. And I remember I had my CDJs in the car all day, and the weather was kind of in the 30s. My ass had a very difficult lesson that night in condensation on the lens of a CDJ. It would not read my DJs. So bless his heart, that's when I used to work at 90.5. And DJ Greedy, Sal Garcia, was doing the Hot Mix show. As soon as that show was over, he rushed over and he brought gear and we pulled off the night. That's another honorable mention. I remember the time that I had a guy that was just getting on my freaking nerves the whole night, nitpicking everything until I got to the point where I took my headphones off and I said, here. And he looked at me. And he's like, what do you mean? What are you doing? I go, here. I go, take the headphones. Take the headphones because obviously you know what you're doing and I don't. I go, you take the headphones. You can take over the party and I'm going to the bar. I did not hear from that guy for the rest of the night. And usually I'm not a jerk, even if I'm having a bad day, whatever. I'm always cool with everybody. Worst client I ever had was this one woman who hired me, who was a total bridezilla. Bless my significant other's heart because she never goes with me, but that day she went with me and she wanted to beat that person because that woman could not have been ruder to me and to her. Literally was telling us what to play song by song and did not want us mixing anything when it's like,
Oh, my
yeah,
God.
one of those. Okay, so those are all like kind of side notes, and there's more, but those are the ones that stick out of my mind. But the number one, story of all time till this day, it was December of 2009. I had been DJing a Christmas party for an elementary school, but for the staff, not for the kids, for the staff, for various years. And this particular night, everybody was drinking harder than normal. And these were teachers. And they were drinking very hard. And I could sense something in the air. And all of a sudden, this guy I know, that I still know till this day, came up to me. And he was kind of talking to me. And I don't know if he had been kind of arguing with one of his colleagues that night, who was a woman, who was a vice principal at that place. And he comes up to me and he was talking to me. And then the vice principal comes up to him and was pretty drunk or out of it. Or she was on something. She said something to him. He had also been drinking. He said something to her. So they started doing a back and forth by my equipment. Okay. He said something that she didn't like. So she grabbed my bottled water that I had on, the table and threw some of it at him. Then proceeded to grab what was left and then threw it all over my DJ mixer. All of a sudden, you hear feedback and popping noises on the speakers.
Yeah.
And Jesse, I could not hold it in. I went off on her. My microphone was still working, and I kind of gave the school a piece of my mind. I do regret doing that because I said some very not nice things. But I was upset.
Well, yeah.
I was upset.
I mean, all the money that you've invested in that piece of equipment for somebody just to spill it easily, I would have probably done the same thing.
And as soon as it was over, she disappeared. I had to call the police. And I had to do a police report. A couple of days later, I met with the principal, which was her boss. And the principal tried to make it where she said that they were not liable in any way, shape, or form. And I go, no, you are liable because this happened during an event from your school where one of your employees decided to do what they did.
Right.
So then I said, if I have the option right now to press charges. And once I said that, they had no choice but to reimburse me because, as is my understanding, when you get charged with a misdemeanor, this would have been a misdemeanor, you can't work for this particular school system. I can't tell you which one, but you cannot work for this particular school system. So I think it was a matter of, listen, this guy's going to press charges. If he presses charges, we're going to have to let you go.
Yeah, we're going to have to fire you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I went, they cut me a check, but then I still got lectured by the principal, Jesse. I got lectured about the rant I went on the mic that night. And I said, well, what the hell kind of people you have working for you that conduct themselves this way at a school function? I mean, I get it's their Christmas party. They put their money away like in a fund and they pay for it.
Right.
But my God, I mean, if you are an individual who takes an oath to teach the 3 R's to kids, you would think you would be able to act in a more professional manner, even if it's at a function that you pay for, because you're still expected to be professional in anything that has the tag, so to speak, or the brand of a school system.
That's why there's unfortunately, that's why there's no more, there's a lot of places that, going back to the Christmas parties, there's more clients that just stop. They're like, oh, we're not having Christmas parties this year. Unfortunately, last year there was an incident and we're choosing not to do Christmas parties. And it's just like little incidents, and where it got to one client where they're like, oh, it's because there was a sexual harassment incident last year, and we're not going to have one this year. I'm like, whoa, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
But yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But there's just countless of stories where I remember I was at a gig, and I remember it was a quinceañera, and then the guy, like, it was already at the end, and I was like getting feedback from my clients, like, hey, how was it? Did you like it? Was it what you expected? Thank you very much for choosing me as a DJ and stuff like that. And you know, I kind of felt comfortable with that client because I'm like, man, this is great. You know, great venue. It looks pretty awesome. And, you know, wow, you know, a Mexican could afford this and something like that. You know, I remember saying that because I felt comfortable saying that to him. And then I remember, man, for it to be a Mexican party,
You said that?
I said, for it to be a Mexican party, there was only one thing that was missing. And he's like, what is that? I'm like, for a fight to break out. And then that was like, me and him were joking back and forth. When I said that, that was the cue. That was the cue. And a fight broke out. A fight broke out where they started throwing chairs. Everybody got involved, where there was about like 5-6 police cars outside the venue.
Yeah.
Because of that. And he just looked at me, and I looked at him, and it was like another Southwest situation. Want to get away? Because I'm like, how the hell did I do that?
They took your cue.
Yeah.
And then you said, I want $1 million.
I wish.
And then nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
You used your one wish on a fight. I remember one time we were at I was doing something in Countryside, and it was a while back, and nothing specifically happened, like there was no fight or anything, but it was a pretty easy gig. And then I was done, and then it's like, okay, ya viene el tamborazo. Tamborazo showed up. I went to the bathroom, and all I can tell you is I saw 2 individual males get out of a stall wiping their noses, and then later that night I had to use that stall because the urinals were being used, and I saw some blood in there, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what kind of party is this? I'm like, what am I getting involved in? And everybody was rowdy. I mean, you know what? If that's what you choose to do on your time, that's on you, man. I'm not here to judge. I don't do that. I don't partake. But man, those guys were there to party. And I wasn't even at, the point in my life I am now, where now I'm more serious. Back then I was a little bit more open, but I was still like, what the hell? And those guys got out of there like zombies. And I remember they were just very, very loud, Again, I don't have a problem with people doing whatever they do as long as it doesn't affect me or it doesn't harm other people. I don't have a problem with it, but I was a little kind of like, I had just never seen that, like I've seen that at a nightclub where people are doing stuff like that, but I had never seen that like I think it was a wedding. It was a wedding. And I'm like, geez, you guys are awfully happy for them. Like, that's a hell of a way to celebrate someone else's wedding. I'm like, yeah, good for them, But yeah, the stories are
endless.
They're endless. They're countless. And before we wrap, I wanted to ask you, like, do you find yourself sometimes battling yourself, trying to give people a deal, but trying not to let them take advantage? And let me tell you why I'm asking this. Because I've had people that, in the past, 10 years ago, maybe I gave them a really good deal, but, times have changed and I can't give them that same deal anymore. And they reach out to me 10 years ago, 10 years later. And it's like, I can't give you the deal anymore. 10 years have passed.
Right. No, it's happened because, that same thing happened where, so right now what I do is, I don't deal with my bookings anymore. I have a company that does that for me. So all my information goes strictly to that company, and which is the marketing label that I'm part of. Mm-hmm. What happens is I remember I'm getting a phone call from which is my manager. He's my booking manager. He's like, Jesse, this guy, he keeps on calling. He says just to mention a name, and that you'll remember him by this. And I said, okay, what's that name? And he's like, Bulldog. I have no idea what you're talking about. So found out that he wasn't even like a Facebook friend or nothing, but cut a long story short, because it was a span of a couple days going back and forth. What ended up happening was these daytimes that I used to do back in the day, I used to charge $150 to do these daytimes, and it was cool. Well, a cousin of his saw me at one of the daytimes. I didn't know him personally, but he was like, yeah, Jesse's gonna give you a deal. He charged $150 that one time, and he's like, he charged $150 that one time, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna give us that deal now at this age.
Wow.
For a wedding. And I said, what? You gotta be kidding. I'm like, and I don't know you personally?
Yeah.
You gotta be joking me. So I said, nah, it's not possible. I don't know this guy. He's not even a friend. If I haven't talked to you in the last 6 months, I don't consider you as a friend.
Right.
I understand nowadays adulting, everybody has their lives. I understand. But if I don't talk to you, say what's up to you within a year, then you're not considered a close friend of mine. Because somebody reaches out. But one of the other things that I got was I was dealing with a client where she agreed to have my services, but she's like, well, I'm shopping around. I said, you have all the right to shop around. But she's like, well, this particular DJ is charging me $300 for the whole night. And I said, ma'am, by all means, you have all the right to go with that guy. And she's like, no, but I want you to give me his price. I want you for that price. And I said, do you know the logic behind it? Like, you're not making any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
How do you expect me to give another DJ's price?
Yeah.
If that's not what I'm worth.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, it was about 3 days I was going back and forth with this lady. I want that price. And I said, unfortunately, you're not going to give that price. You're not going to give that price.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to deal with you. And I said, if you're not going to take my price, I will not do your party. And I said, that's it. She agreed to pay, but it was one of the hardest. She gave me such a hard time.
Yeah.
With music. And then at the end of the night, I was just more like, man, I shouldn't even done this party because I'm mentally drained. I'm physically drained.
Yeah.
We did, I do whole productions.
Yeah.
We do the monograms, we do the video screens, and we do all this stuff. So it's like, she asked for all that. We did like uplighting for her. Yeah. And it's like, and I felt, me just like coming in and doing my thing, I felt more like mentally drained out of the whole party. I'm like, this wasn't even worth it.
Yeah, and you know what? I found when you end up doing those, when you're kind of going back and forth and they give in to your demand after kind of haggling with them, I found like, you know what? Just go with that DJ, because my whole thing is like, I know you're going to be super demanding because you're already going to be upset because you had to pay this amount of money. So it's kind of like, you're going to, treat me like a, Maxwell House where you're going to take me till the last drop. And my whole thing is like, no, just go over there. And I've told people, because I had people, I'm like the king of getting, quotes and requests for prices. And then I don't hear from people or whatever. And I don't get mad. I used to get mad years ago. Now I'm just like, whatever, because I'm like, I have a set amount of money that I'll leave my house for. And I always tell myself, I won't leave my house for less than this, because to me, it's not worth it. It's not worth, what comes with it. It's a very stressful job. People are always going to remember you as the guy or girl who did their wedding or their quince or whatever. And, to me, sometimes, and I go by vibe from clients. If they don't give me a vibe, then I just pass them on, or I just say, you know what, I can't do it or whatever, because I need to have that vibe,
You know what's so cool though? Sorry to interrupt you, but one of the cool things was got a client call me the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "Hey," and this is one thing I hate when they say, "Hey, do you remember me?" I'm like, I can't see you over the phone. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know you by your name, but no, I'm sorry, I don't remember you. So she's like, "Yeah, you DJ'd my quinceañera about 7 years ago," and I said, "Oh, okay," and she's like, "I want to hire you for my wedding," and I'm like, "Whoa." I'm like, I don't know if this has been done, but I'm like, you're probably the first person where I've done their quinceañera and now I'm doing their wedding. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I thought that was pretty awesome little side note of that.
That's interesting. So did you end up remembering her or no?
I do not remember her. No.
Okay, so needless to say, you didn't do the gig.
Well, I haven't done it yet. So
okay, so you're going back and forth.
It's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up, but everything's already said and done.
Okay.
But everything's already set as far as the contract and ready to go.
Now, as we wrap up, my last thing is like, if, like, now, what's the one thing that if you could change to be how it used to be before, that you would want, like, still happening till this day when it comes to DJing? Like, if there was one thing that you could have held down from back in the day, what is it? Or you think that, you know, you're kind of set, you like where everything is. Is there anything specific that you would like to have be how it used to be?
It's probably not pertaining to DJing. It's more of like the nightlife.
Mm-hmm.
I would like, if there was something like back in the day that I remember, was simple exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like nowadays every restaurant, I'm not knocking them down, you know, it's part of their hustle.
Mm-hmm.
But like every restaurant / bar / any restaurant that has a liquor license, they always have a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
They always have to have some type of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Or back in the day, you went to an actual nightclub, like a brick and mortar place that was just a nightclub that was only open in the night,
mm-hmm.
that was open on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's that type of exclusivity where you would be like, man, you know, I want to go to this place. I want to go dance. I want to go to this type of club.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was only where you had a certain type of music,
mm-hmm.
and you would go to that place.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I missed from back in the day, because it was more like, hey, I want to go up north. I want to hear some Spanish rock.
Mm-hmm.
You would go to one particular place.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, like if you go downtown, if you go clubbing, the versatility of DJs is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you gotta work yourself up to it. You know,
right.
As far as like I don't know if I'm in the mood for this, but now I gotta wait till he plays this other type of genre.
Right.
So having something like that, that's something what I missed from back in the day that could probably be useful. But unfortunately, with, you know, the business sense of it, it wouldn't work nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one thing that I wish we could bring back, I really wish that it would be kind of how it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, where there was a lot of space for DJs when it comes to be able to get, or where it meant something like radio exposure. To me, it doesn't mean what it used to mean, because now digital has changed it so much. SoundCloud, Facebook, you know, all of these, you know, file sharing sites have changed everything. YouTube has changed everything completely. You know, I wish that there was more significance to, you know, a DJ saying that he could be on X radio station, you know, the way, again, that, you know, the DJs that I looked up to kind of growing up were able to get in my ears, you know. Nowadays, you know, that really doesn't mean much. If you can get your hustle on one of these websites, SoundCloud, YouTube, or whatever, then you're good. And not that you're good, but you know, you have some exposure if you just get your hustle hard enough. The other thing too is, it doesn't necessarily mean you're good. You know, you have your stuff posted on YouTube because you can just sync the hell out of everything. I've seen DJs that, you know, again, I don't want to mention names, but there's DJs I know that are very young that I don't think are that talented, but I've seen them exposed or get exposure for the wrong reasons. I'll leave it at that. That's where I'll leave it. I just wish that there was more emphasis on the actual talent of DJing.
Yeah.
You know.
pretty much.
That would be the one thing that I wish that I would be able to bring back. And not so much me, because I never consider myself to be a great DJ. I consider myself to be a serviceable DJ, one that can get the job done from point A to point B. But I never considered myself to be some sort of superstar DJ, or I know some people always thought some people who thought they were as good as a Bad Boy Bill.
We need a community of DJs, that back each other up, because each and one of them, like, to this day, I don't feel threatened by anybody. I don't feel, and I know some people might look at it like, oh my God, I would like to talk to him, but I think he's such a big name. But then when they do have the nerve or get the courage to talk to me, they'll be like, oh my God, I thought you were a certain way, and I thought you wouldn't talk to me. And it's like, no, I'm here to help everybody out. There's business for everybody. There's that, if you're a good DJ, if you're really truthful and the way you carry yourself, and you're not out to, screw people over. I mean, I'm here to help out anybody, and that's why we have that good relationship between you and I, for so many years, because we've just been strictly legit.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times that I get people who want like the whole production, and I'll be like, I'm not interested in doing that, but here's some people who are and who can do it. Go and hammer it out with them. It's up to them if they want to do it or can do it, because I know what I am and I know what I want to do. And to me, at this point in my life, I know what I want. To me, this is kind of something I do on the side. I count how many gigs I want to do on one hand, and yeah, I think it's age, man, because my patience is less and less. But you know what? One thing I legitimately enjoy, I enjoy DJing, a handful of times a year up at River North where I DJ, because I love the format that they have, that they allow me to work within. I like that it's not necessarily a club there. It's like a laid back kind of lounge atmosphere. So I'm not going to have 56 people coming up to me in one night asking me for songs. I don't have a problem with people asking me for songs, but one of my pet peeves is if you kind of get a grasp of what I'm playing, like the genre that I'm in, don't come to me and like, if you see that all I have is oranges, don't come to me and ask me for like papaya,
The one thing I hate is when I have the dance floor packed at any place, wedding, club, everything, and I've been getting this a lot lately, and they'll go up to you and say, hey, me and my lady, we're about to leave. Can you play a slow song? Can you play a romantic song? And I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? You just want me to play a slow song in the middle of prime time of the night? They're like, well, we're about to leave, and I really want to dance a song with my lady. Oh my God!
How do you handle that?
I'll
be like, go talk to the people who are paying me.
That's 90% of the time, but I kind of when I see like some older people sitting down, that's where it comes into like when I analyze the crowd, where I can read the crowd, where I see a lot of older people sitting down. Then yeah, you know what? I'll play one or two, and then get back into the groove of things. But if it's only them, and and they're just putting themselves first than the rest of the party, I just ignore that request.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that we face. Like, or I was in the bathroom, I didn't hear when you played it, I'll be like, well, that's not my problem.
That's not, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the most famous one.
The famous one, yeah. Can you play the cha-cha slide again? Because I was in the bathroom.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to play the cha-cha slide. Dance. Yeah, con trabajos lo toqué una vez y me está jodiendo que lo ponga otra vez. So to conclude, I mean, I think it's evident that, I mean, it's not all fun and games. It's great, and I think that anybody who's getting into it and really wants to get their hustle on, it can be as great as you want to make it. Like, if you really get your hustle on and you kind of build a client list and at least a very small following within your circle, you can make some decent side of money. I personally would not want to do it, 52 weeks out of the year. But I think if you can put the time in and you get the equipment and you got the passion and the patience for it, I think it could be an okay way to make a living.
Right.
Jesse, before we get on out of here, where can people reach out to you?
I got a website. It's jesseelgrandote.com. It's still kind of a half-ass website, but you could reach me there. There's always a contact information. Or on Facebook, Jesse El Grandote. Also Instagram, DJ El Grandote. That's all my social media. Or you could, what they say, just Google me, Jesse El Grandote.
Okay, cool. I know I'm just because I follow you, but you're not doing the guacamole mix no more, right?
No, I started doing a little bit something different with the guacamole mix. Did this a couple of weeks ago, where I'm letting everybody download the mix. I was getting a lot of requests for people that, hey, give me a copy of that mix, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it live. It's not getting recorded.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest issues that I was facing was copyright issues with the music.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of lash from Facebook, and there was a lot of threats saying that they were going to delete my page.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I kind of give in.
I hope that eventually that gets resolved. Because I really think that we're not making money off of it. I mean, we're not. Right. It is an exposure kind of thing. It's like the old days with the mixtapes for promo use. We do it for promo use, but we're not making money off of it directly. And there are songs sometimes that we put out there that nobody else, plays even on radio or anywhere else. So, hopefully one day that can be resolved. I don't think it will be because there's too much, kind of greed between labels and stuff. And the algorithms of Facebook are very specific, but whatever. So anyway, Jesse, is there anything else you want to add there before we let you go? I know you've been very generous with your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Any other DJ that has questions, feel free to reach out to me. You got all my info, and thank you guys for tuning in. And don't forget to follow me on my social media.
All right, Jesse, thanks so much. Que no sea la última vez. Thank you again.
Definitely, man. Thanks to you, brother.
So gracious with this time is Jesse El Grandote. Aquí en lo que es Carlitos Way podcast. Thanks so much to him. We have been in this podcast for almost 2 hours already. Almost 2 hours. This is our longest podcast to date. But it's such an interesting topic. It's something that we can probably keep talking about for another hour, at least another hour. There's so many stories that I think that Jesse has and that I have and that all these DJs in Chicago have. For all the great DJs there are, Bad Boy Bill, amongst others, there's always, just DJs coming out of Chicago that have produced house tracks and all this other stuff. But there's also a group of core DJs that are really good that don't necessarily have a track out. They don't necessarily have a song on iTunes. They're just people who DJ kind of because they love the music. Obviously, they make a business out of it, to be able to supplement their income or feed their families or whatever. But at the same time, they love the craft, but they're not going to be in the headlines or in iTunes or in Beatport or anything like that with any tracks. They're just people who go and on weekends, go and DJ a quinceañera and go and DJ, a wedding, and go and DJ, a birthday party and things like that at a hall and set up, speakers and monogram signs on walls and trusses and, TV screens and things like that. And they do that. Yes, they love it, but it's also something they do to be able to provide for their family, so there's all this core group of really good DJs. And I do want to say, obviously, if you ever need one in the Chicagoland area, and it doesn't even have to be me, but there's so many out there that I can hook you up with. Always just get somebody that is going to be referred to you, it's going to come with quality. I can't stress that enough because it's one thing to go and to just do this from one day to another, which I'm not knocking your hustle. You can do that, but it's also a thing of that experience really does make the difference. And if you have the stories to tell, then I know you're going to be able to handle any situation that can be thrown at you. So, again, I can't stress that enough. All right, before we get on out of here, I have to send some shout-outs and do some rapid fire. We didn't do it in the last episode. I want to do it in this one. I want to send a shout-out to Raul, Too Cool Raul, who listens to the podcast. He has sent me some very nice messages regarding the podcast. I want to send a shout-out to him and his beautiful family. And thanks so much for streaming us and listening to the podcast. And I'm hoping you're listening to this one and especially to this shout out as well. Also to John Genza. We mentioned him earlier, but I know that he listens or tries to listen. I got his complaint about Apple, but thanks so much to him. And thanks to you for listening. I really appreciate it. I'd love to know that you listen. Send me a message on social media, on Instagram, at Carlitos Waygram with a W, or at facebook.com/DJROCKTONIK. We mentioned the phone line earlier. You can call there. You can leave a message, and we'll play it here on the next edition of the podcast. And again, we're available on practically every major platform where you can find podcasts. Just search Carlitos Way podcast on there. And on YouTube, search Carlitos Way podcast as well. And again, the phone number is 312-487-1195. 312-487-1195. You can call and leave a message, or you can send us a text message. We'll make sure we get it on here on the Carlitos Way podcast. So there's your shout outs. There's your info to leave us a message as well. You can also leave it, like I said earlier, on my social media. All right, so on to rapid fire. Not too many in this edition, but let's get to them. Somebody asked me, hey, what do you think of the new Disney Plus? My answer is I have no opinion on the new Disney Plus because I have not tried it yet. So I couldn't give you an opinion on something that I still haven't tried. I think the concept is cool, but I think also that it's kind of a trend that we're seeing right now, and that whole nostalgia thing. Nostalgia works. You know, last week I was buying a bunch of retro Happy Meals. I don't know if you heard, but McDonald's had the retro Happy Meals around the 5th of November. And yeah, I was one of those people. I was buying the Happy Meals, and then they had all this food that I felt forced to have to eat, but I was buying the minimal Happy Meal possible. So I would go and buy like the chicken nugget 4-piece because I really didn't want like a massive meal. But I didn't want to throw the food away. So I was stuck because I ended up having to eat it. And in the end, the only retro toy I got was that cheeseburger transformer thing. And then we got, what was it? The Tamagotchi, which is not even like the real one. The real ones were actually electronic pets. This one was like a replica that just lights up. What else did we get? We got a Luigi, but that turned out to not even be part of the retro toys. And a Grimace. The Grimace did. So, yeah, I think that nostalgia sells, and I think that's why Disney Plus is working. We'll see if it has long-term sustainability. Somebody asked me, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? What I usually do, except this year I'm not working. I've worked the last few years on Thanksgiving for those, I think it's, at least on Thanksgiving Day I've had to work. So this year I don't have to work on Thanksgiving, so that's awesome. I'll be with family, and that's it. Black Friday, I might have to DJ. Not sure yet, but you know, that's at night, so it kind of is what it is. So that's what I'm doing Thanksgiving, and thankfully I don't have to work. So I'm thankful about that. And somebody else asked me, hey, what did you really end up doing for your birthday? If you didn't hear the last episode, go back and hear it. I'll tell you what I did on my birthday on there, which basically included jump starting a car. But I went out to dinner. And it was awesome with my family a few days before my birthday. And my birthday just had a lot of drama going on. Stuff that I don't ask for. Been having a lot of issues with her car and my car lately. As I speak right now, my car's in the shop again. So kind of is what it is. And then her birthday came, a few days after. And her birthday I thought was cool. It was on a Sunday. And her gift was late. I was going to go pick it up today. But my car's in the shop again. So if you want to come give me a ride, swing on by. All right, so that's this edition's Rapid Fire. That was really rapid. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Carlitos Way podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You already know where you can reach us on the social. You already know where you can stream us and subscribe. Now I ask you to go and tell all your friends that the Carlitos Way podcast is here so you can help us grow Way podcast. Hasta la próxima. I'm gone.